Hi everyone, my name is Sharon Blackmore, and along with my husband Jason, we own and operate Love Shack Quilts. And over the weekend, we released a new project that we're pretty excited about. It's called A Beautiful Mind, this gorgeous sampler style quilt that you can see right here on the screen. And the special thing about it is a digital interactive pattern. It's the first of its kind. We have a gorgeous pattern that is accessible on all devices, laptop, desktop, iPad, even your phone, even though it would be kind of tiny. But you can navigate through the entire pattern by just clicking and touching where you want to go next. So it's pretty cool. Yesterday we did a live Zoom session with some people that wanted to check it out in further detail. So we walk you through the whole pattern, really explaining how it works and how to navigate through it. And we hope that if you have any questions, you'll just pop them in the comments below, and we'll absolutely get back to you and answer them right away. So you can check out the video and see what it's all about, and we will share a link at the end if you're so inclined to get the pattern for yourself. It'll take you right to our website so that you can get started. Thanks very much for watching.
Here's the homepage of our website, and anybody can see this right here. Right here where you can see my mouse hover over this Beautiful Mind quick link if you've already purchased. If you click on this and you haven't purchased yet, you're going to get taken by anybody who clicks on this. You're going to get taken to the password area, and you can't go any further unless you have the password. So that's what is included in your PDF when you download that. But we wanted to make it really easy for you to go back and find the pattern whenever you wanted to access it, instead of having to go back into your email and search for a link. Oh, the link download expired in 30 days. Now where's my link? We've decided to just put a button right on our homepage, right on the front page of our website, right at the top. So that all you have to do is click on it, and the password, I can't tell you what it is here, but when you get the download, the password is super easy to remember. So all you got to do is click on this link. So I'm going to walk you through the process. And here's the guest area. And I'm going to type my password in. And you come to a page where you have the option to look at the fabric requirements and print them ahead of time. The fabric requirements are inside the pattern as well, but we thought it would be nice to include access to a printable copy of the pattern fabric requirements, which has a picture of the quilt on it. So you could take that to the quilt shop when you're doing your shopping. Probably you're not going to do a whole lot of shopping for making the blocks themselves, because you can see that they're pretty scrappy. But as we get into these alternate setting blocks here, and these ones in there, and the borders and the outer setting triangles there, I've used more. Rosa's made the quilt too, and Rosa did the same thing, scrappy blocks, but yardage for all of the setting blocks and setting triangles and borders. So if that's something that you want to do, then you can even wait until you've made all the blocks, bring your blocks with you, toss a half a dozen of them down on top of a few different fabrics and audition them and see which you feel showcases them the best. So to get started, all you're going to do is click on Launch a Beautiful Mind Interactive Pattern. And the first time you launch it, did you see, I don't know if you saw that little blue bar. It's really quick on my computer. It may be really super quick for you as well. But the first time you load the pattern, and this is also stated in the PDF that you download, that the very first time that you launch it, it may take a little bit longer to pop up to this page. But once you have done that once, all of your subsequent loads should be really quick, just like this. Unless you go through and clear your cache, your internet history, your browser history, your cookies, and all that complicated stuff that most of us don't do. So unless you clean your cache out, and you don't know what that is and you're not doing it, don't worry about it, then every load is going to be as quick as this. So whether you're using this on your laptop or your desktop, iPad, you can use it on your phone, although everything's going to be really small on your phone, so I wouldn't recommend it. You're going to see things much better on a larger screen, unless you have one of those really big, cool, huge phones. Everything is touch or click activated. So as you see here, we've got these buttons: fabric requirements before you begin, block gallery, alternate blocks and borders in assembly. And down here is a little exit button, which we have a really cool feature in there that I'll show you at the very end. So let's start with the fabric requirements, and we'll just walk through this right from the beginning. Does anybody have any questions so far? You can unmute if you're trying to talk and you have a question. If you're muted, I won't be able to hear you. And I take it as a good sign when there aren't any questions, because for me, that's my feedback that I'm explaining things well. So it's fine if you don't have any questions. So I just tapped on that button for fabric requirements, and here we are. This is exactly what the printable fabric requirements looks like, so that you can take it with you shopping. It's colors, so you can kind of get an idea of the scheme and the palette, and think about how you want to choose your setting fabrics for yours. I did give yardage for the blocks, even though they're scrappy. I did a rough total, approximately 4 meters-ish, maybe less, maybe more, depending on how many times maybe you goof and have to remake a block. I know I've done that more than once, but approximately 4 meters. And then all of the rest of your requirements for your setting fabrics and borders is there. I've included binding measurement as well as backing based on an extra wide. So you have a couple of options now. At the top of the screen, you're going to start to see these little things that you can click on, home and before you begin. So we can go back to the home if we want to and jump to something completely different. Or you can go to the next icon, which if we go back home here, you can see the next one is before you begin. So as soon as we're finished looking at each section, we can move from that section to the next one, or we can go back home and look at a different section altogether. So let's move into before you begin. And this is a section of the pattern that is going to tell you kind of how it works, as well as we're going to talk to you about a lot of techniques that are going to be used throughout the making of all of the blocks, that we don't want to necessarily repeat all of the instructions for that technique on every single block that it appears in. So we have this one section that is going to help you through all of those little things. Just a little word about A Beautiful Mind. Probably things I've already said already. One of the things that our description is not only is it digital, which you can see that it is, but it's also interactive. So what does that mean? Interactive means that you can tap on things, and you can have things that will come up and pop up if you click on them. And so there are a couple ways that will happen. So in this box here, it tells you the 2 things that are interactive. One, if you see a light bulb right here, there's going to be a tip, and there's pretty much a tip for every single block. Some of it can be my personal tips straight to you on choosing your fabrics for that particular block. And on the piecing section, if there is, say, for example, a Hasper triangle, flying goose, or a snowball block, that is one of the techniques that it's in this section, that little light bulb will remind you, refer to this section for your instructions on how to make that unit. Because you might look at it and go, I don't remember how to make a flying geese or a half square. Well, maybe you don't, but maybe you will get to that point and you'll be like, I don't remember. So it just reminds you all of that, all those base instructions are here. So we tap on the light bulb, and this is what happens. This is where the tip is going to pop up. And then when you're finished looking at the tip, you're going to touch the light bulb again, and that window is going to close. Same thing as for each block. Each block has a name that we have, I've chosen personally based on things that invoke like inspiration and motivation and feel good kind of words. So each block has a name. And the name was going to appear in the exact same spot through all 40 blocks. And if you tap on that block name, again, we'll have a pop-up in the middle. And I have gone through and picked an inspirational quote that relates to the name of each block. So I kind of feel like it's something that if you meditate or pray or whatever it is that you do, if you think about things while you're stitching, it's just giving you something positive to focus on. We did Peace Love Quilt a few years ago when there was a lot of nastiness going on the internet, and we still feel like the world needs more beauty, right? The world needs more of this positive, feel good stuff. So something that we can focus on while we're stitching. So you're also going to see these symbols here in the cutting instructions for the blocks, and that's just basically to indicate whether or not you're going to cut a square once or twice on the diagonal. pretty straightforward. So again, we can go back to the fabric requirements if you want to. So if you accidentally clicked on that before you begin button and meant to go back, you can go back to the fabric requirements, or you can go home, or you can go to the next page in this section. I'll have a bit of a talk about seam allowance and how it's important to stitch with a scant seam allowance when you're making blocks. The smaller pieces you have in your blocks, the more pieces you have in your blocks, the more important it is to have an accurate scant seam allowance. So there's a little test for you to go ahead and make sure that your seam allowance is accurate before you begin. So again, we can go previous, we can go next, and we'll just move through these. I'll move through these ones a little bit quicker. Basically, these are your technique where you're going to see that little light bulb is going to pop up and remind you. Go and if you need a reminder on how to make that half square triangle, this is where you're going to find that. Same thing for the flying geese. Same thing for snowballs and hourglass blocks. And then we can go right to the next section. Oops, I went all the way back. The block gallery is the next section. Again, I could go home if I wanted to, but I want to go through this and go right to my block gallery, because now that I've read all of the about and before you begin and all that good stuff, I want to get started on the blocks, right? So we go to the block gallery. As you can see, these are all actual photos of my blocks that I made before the quilt was quilted. Actual blocks. They're not a mock-up. They're not a computer generated image. They are actual blocks that I made in my quilt. And each one, you can see the name that has been given. So you can see that there's 40 blocks. Now there is no order that you need to make these blocks in. You could literally bounce around and make them in any order that you want. You don't have to make one block and complete it before you can click on the next one. There's no police. You get to decide how and when you want to make this quilt. And you don't even have to make all 40 blocks. Say you want to pick 10 of the easiest blocks. Maybe you don't feel as confident with some of the tinier pieces with some of the blocks, like say maybe one of these two blocks might be intimidating. And if you feel that, I don't want you to feel stressed out when you're making this quilt. It should be fun and enjoyable. I don't want you to feel nervous about it at all. So if you decide I'm going to pick 10 blocks, but I'm going to make 4 of each of them, and then those are the ones I'm going to use in my layout of 40 blocks. That's 100% your choice. You get to decide that. You get to be the boss of your own art, right? So let's take a look at our very first block and see what to expect. Now there's a lot of little pieces in this one. So you're going to see a little bit more. Some of them have less pieces, which this will be a very simple page. You're going to see an up close picture of the block. And then we have color coded the sections based on what fabric. So this color here corresponds to the light in this. So that's what you're going to cut up the light. And then this color here corresponds to the dark blue. So because we've written the before you begin section with all of the how-to instructions for different things, we wanted to keep all of the slides for the actual block making themselves really, really simple and clean and not a whole lot of word and text everywhere. So we've tried to keep everything simple. And once you've gone through making one block, you'll start to really get an understanding of what everything means over here. So you're going to see on the next page that there's a correspondence to this A, what section that goes in, C, E. And then HST means half square triangle, which is noted in the before you begin section. And then FG stands for flying geese. But there are 2 sizes of flying geese in this block. There's little ones here in the star in the center, and then there's bigger ones here. So you're going to see a difference between flying geese 1 and flying geese 2. So it is really, really straightforward. At first glance, you might be like, oh, too many symbols and codes, but it's really, really simple once you've done one block and go through it. Okay, you do your cutting. Oh, look, there's the name of the block. Let's click on that and see what our quote is for the day. So we've included where we got the quote from. We can close that tip or close that. And then, oh, look, there's a light bulb. I'm going to click on the light bulb. And reminder, so with an accurate scant quarter-inch seam allowances, there are tiny points in the center star. As I said before, the smaller your pieces are and the more there are in a block, the more important it is to establish that accurate quarter-inch seam allowance scant so that you don't cut off your little points. So the next page after you're done your cutting is stitching. So here we're going to make our half square triangles. It tells you how many to make, what fabrics you're using to make it, an arrow with pressing directions, and as well what size you want to trim them to. They are not, these half square triangles are made a little bit oversized so that you can trim them down. And then the same thing with the flying geese. Like I had explained, we have two sizes of flying geese, one that are 2x4 and one that are 1x2. And so it denotes which one is which. And then you're going to start to put your block together here. That's your little center star. And again, if you see a light bulb on this page, just because you saw a light bulb on the previous page and it's in the same spot on the next page, doesn't mean it's the same tip. So anytime you see a light bulb on a page, you want to click on that and you'll get a new tip. So this is where I was saying we refer to, because there are half square triangles and flying geese in this block, refer to those step-by-step instructions on how to make them. And I can't remember if we activated the name. No, it's activated the name only on the first page of every block. It's not on every single one of them. So, and then our third page, so there are 3 slides for every block, a cutting, a stitching, and a final assembly. And this is your final assembly. And again, we branded them as to what units go where. If you're visual, most quilters are, you can usually look at the layout and you're able to kind of put it all together. If not, we've labeled them so that you know what goes where, as well as lots of arrows for your pressing instructions. So I said before that you could move from one section to the next. However, once we're in the block gallery, we have not set it up that it moves to the next block, because as I said, it is 100% your choice what block you want to make next. So you do have some choices. You can go previous and look at your stitching and cutting. If you'd be like, I think maybe I cut that wrong, go back and double check in your previous, next. And then when you're finished the block, you can you can go back home, which goes to the very main screen, or I'm just going to jump back to where we were real quick. You can go back to the direct to the block gallery. So it just cuts out a step basically. And now you get to pick where you want to go next. What block do you want to make? If we look at another block just for funsies, we can look at this one. We've got the color coding for the cutting. Now these symbols and letters all make sense. So because we've walked through it, we can click here and see the tip. I'll let you read that while I have a sip of water. And it took me a bit of time to select the quotes. I really poured through all of the available quotes for all of the different inspirational words just to find the one that made me feel smooshy inside. So hopefully they make you feel good as well. And a tip. So here's an example of a really good tip to save fabric. Cut the 3-inch squares from a 3-inch strip first, and then trim the strip down to 2.5 inches for the rest. So those are the kinds of tips that you can expect to see throughout the pattern that will just help you use your fabric more wisely, choose your fabric as well, so that you have a really good look for your blocks, some fabric selection tips, your stitching, and your assembly. And then we go back to the block gallery. So pretty much all of the blocks have exactly the same layout. There's three slides, the cutting and the stitching and the assembly. And again, you can bounce around in any order that you want. Once you have 40 blocks made, and again, they don't have to be these 40, you can pick a different amount of them if you want to. As long as you have 40 blocks, then you can move on to the alternate blocks. Okay, we have included a little thing here because when Jason was writing up, he said, what the hell is a woof? What's a woof? And I know you're muted, but I hope you're laughing. I can't hear you, but I trust that you're laughing. What's a woof? So I had to explain what a woof is to him. And he's like, well, then we have to include that, because if I didn't know what it was, maybe somebody else doesn't know what it is. I'm like, yes, you're absolutely right. Every pattern should have that explained. So here it is. So then all of your cutting, now the cutting is all together in one section here because we're using yardage for the setting triangles and the alternate blocks and so on. So I put it all on one page instead of splitting it up like the other individual blocks. And here you can see the example of those symbols, cutting twice on the diagonal. And then our alternate block piecing complete with the sizes of pieces that you're putting where, and the arrows to tell you what direction to press in, how many to make, and what size they should be. And then our next alternate piecing are these really cool large, these are 8-inch blocks, by the way. They're all 8-inch blocks. Cool hourglass and some half square triangles. And again, you could go back home if you wanted to, or you can go straight on to borders and assembly. So once you have all your alternate blocks made on top of your original 40 blocks, now we get into a row layout on an on-point setting. And these red lines indicate the rows, the black arrows indicate the pressing for them. And basically the rest of it gets put together the exact same way as the top half, okay? Tip. You may choose to place the main piece blocks in different positions to suit your liking. You don't have to copy my layout. It's not a hard and fast rule that that's what this quilt is supposed to look like. You get to choose. Again, you're the boss of your own art. You can choose where you want to put those blocks. If you find a more pleasing arrangement of them, you go right ahead. It mentions on how to trim as well as what size the quilt should be at this point. And then we're going to get into the borders. So lots of cutting and making of sections for the borders, a diagram, stitching order. The middle border has some half square triangles on the end because they make a really cool little kind of picture frame corner right here. So then we have another diagram explaining what to do. And our outer borders, and again with the arrows indicating the pressing instructions. One of the things that you can do with this, because these little borders here, there's a little black one that blends in that you can't see. Basically, you know that it's there because that tip of that block is a little bit of a space away from the pink. Those are 1/2-inch finished. You don't have to do them if you don't want to. You could just put a plain border on it and call it a day. But I wanted my borders to be a little bit more jazzy on it. And so if you feel so inclined to do it the same way, you can. But if you feel like saving a little bit of time, you could miter these in, sew them together ahead of time. Instead of sewing the individual little strips to your quilt, you could go ahead and miter them and stitch them on. The only reason that it doesn't say that in the pattern is because then I'd have to write instructions on how to miter. And that's another beast. So option for you if you feel so inclined to do that. And then our very last page of the pattern, our quilt is complete and should measure 89.5 square. This image shows a black binding. I bound my personal quilt in the gold, but you could bind in whichever you wanted. So, and then to leave, we have this little exit button here when we are all finished. And if we click on the exit button, then we have this cute little lovely picture of Jason and I when we went to Nova Scotia together. Oh, and it's gone. So it only lasts for about 5 seconds and then it boots you back out. And so to load it again, all you'd have to do is click on that to go back in and you'd be right back where.
So there you have it, a full walkthrough of our new digital interactive pattern for A Beautiful Mind. Please, if you have any questions or even comments or feedback on the project, please add them in the comments below and we'll definitely get back to you. We love to hear that kind of feedback and answer any questions that you might have. And as promised, here is a link where you can get the pattern for yourself.